Chapter 1. The exiles returned. The carriage wheels ground to a halt on gravel that remembered her footsteps. Alara Ashford had sworn she would never return to Thornhaven Manor. 5 years ago, she had walked down the same drive with nothing but a single trunk and her mother's last slap still burning her cheek. The family had given her a choice: marry Lord Pemberton, a man twice her age, with hands that wandered and breath that reeked of brandy, or leave with nothing. She had chosen nothing. Now, standing before the iron gates as twilight bled purple across the sky, Alara wondered if she had made a terrible mistake in coming back. The letter had arrived 3 weeks ago, sealed in black wax with her father's crest. Your sister is dead. The estate passes to you. Come home. No apology. No explanation for how Caroline had died at 23, healthy and vibrant the last time Alara had seen her. Just a summons, cold as winter stone. The gates swung open without her touching them. Alara's breath caught. She had expected servants or at least the screech of rusted hinges. Instead, the gates moved with silent, liquid grace, as though welcoming her into the mouth of something patient and hungry. Drive on, she told the coachman, keeping her voice steady. He didn't move. When she turned to look at him, his face had gone white, his eyes fixed on something beyond the gates. Miss, I'll wait here. Whatever business you have, conclude it quickly. I won't linger past full dark. The manor is a mile up the drive. You can't expect me to walk. I expect you to come back alive, he said flatly. There's been talk in the village. Strange talk. People don't return from Thornhaven after sunset. Alara felt ice creep down her spine, but she lifted her chin. She had survived 5 years alone in London, working as a governess for families who treated her like a ghost. She had endured hunger, humiliation, and the slow death of every dream she'd once held. She would not be frightened by country superstition. Then I'll walk, she said, gathering her skirts. The coachman helped her down, his hands shaking as they touched hers. God keep you, miss, he whispered. The carriage wheeled around and fled. Alara stood alone at the gates, watching the last of the daylight drain from the world. The air smelled wrong, not like the roses and honeysuckle she remembered, but like stone and smoke and something older. Something that made her skin prickle with instinctive warning. She began to walk. The drive cut through an avenue of ancient oaks that had stood here since before her grandfather's time. Their branches made a tunnel overhead, blocking out what little remained of the sky. In the gathering darkness, Alara could barely see 10 feet ahead. She walked faster, her boots crunching on gravel, her heart beating too quickly. Halfway to the manor, she heard the first sound that didn't belong: footsteps. Behind her, matching her pace, Alara stopped. The footsteps stopped. She turned slowly, peering into the shadows beneath the trees. Who's there? Silence. But it was the wrong kind of silence, too heavy, too watchful. The kind that pressed against her ears and made her want to run. I know you're there, she called, her voice sharper than she felt. Show yourself. A figure stepped out from behind an oak. He was tall, dressed in black that made him nearly invisible in the dusk. But his face, even in shadow, she could see the sharp angles of it, the pale skin that seemed to catch what little light remained. He moved with a predator's grace, each step deliberate and soundless. You shouldn't be here, he said. His voice was low, cultured, and carried an accent she couldn't place. Something old, something from no place she knew. This is my family's estate, Alara replied, fighting to keep her voice from shaking. I have every right to be here. Your family no longer holds dominion over Thornhaven. He took another step closer. Leave now, while you still can. I received a letter. My father summoned me. Your father is dead. The words were flat, final. He died 6 months ago. Whatever letter you received, it did not come from him. Alara's world tilted. That's impossible. The seal was likely forged by someone who wanted you here. He was close enough now that she could see his eyes, dark, depthless, and fixed on her with an intensity that made her feel like prey. You were bait, Miss Ashford. And now you've walked into the trap. Before she could respond, before she could even process what he was saying, the attack came. They emerged from the trees on both sides, 3 figures moving with inhuman speed, their faces twisted with hunger. Alara screamed, stumbling backward, but there was nowhere to run. One of them reached for her, fingers curved like claws, and the man in black moved. He was suddenly between her and the attackers, moving so fast he blurred. There was a sound like breaking branches, a wet crunch, and one of the figures went down. The others actually hissed, like serpents, and lunged at him. Alara pressed herself against an oak, her mind refusing to accept what her eyes were seeing. The man fought like nothing human, his movements liquid and brutal. But his attackers were just as fast, just as impossible. One of them broke past his guard and came for her. The man in black caught it by the throat and threw it 20 feet into a tree trunk. The impact shook the entire oak. When he turned back to face the last attacker, Alara saw his face clearly for the first time. His eyes had changed. They were no longer dark, they were crimson, bright as fresh blood, and burning with an inhuman light. "Run," he said, but Alara couldn't move, couldn't breathe, could only watch as he tore through the final attacker with his bare hands. When it was over, when the things that had attacked her lay broken and still on the forest floor, he turned to her. His eyes were fading back to dark, but she had seen. She knew. "What are you?" she whispered. He looked at her for a long moment, and something like regret crossed his face. "Your only chance of surviving the night," he said. "Now run." Chapter 2. Sanctuary and Shadowwellera didn't run. Her legs had turned to stone, rooted to the forest floor, while her mind screamed at her to move. The man the thing stood 10 feet away, watching her with those eyes that had burned red only moments ago. Blood stained his hands, dark and viscous in the failing light. "I told you to run," he said, his voice edged with something between anger and exhaustion. "To where?" Alara's voice came out steadier than she expected. "You said my family is dead. You said I was bait. If I run into those woods, will I find safety? Or more of them?" He tilted his head, studying her with an expression she couldn't read. "You're not screaming. Would it help?" No, ghost of something amusement, perhaps flickered across his face. Then it vanished, replaced by cold calculation. "The Corvinus house will send more hunters before dawn." These 3 were scouts. "When they don't report back, a full cohort will come." Corvinus house? Alara echoed. The name meant nothing to her, but the way he said it carried weight, the weight of old law and older violence. Questions later. Movement now. He started toward the manor, then paused when she didn't follow. "Unless you'd prefer to meet the next wave alone?" Alara's survival instinct finally overcame her shock. She hurried after him, half running to match his long strides. "The manor is compromised, isn't it? That's why you're here. The manor has been compromised for 6 months. Since the night your father tried to bargain with forces he didn't understand." He glanced back at her. He offered Thornhaven as neutral ground for a peace summit between houses. He thought he was being diplomatic. He was being a fool. What happened to him? He became collateral damage when the summit failed. His tone was matter-of-fact, clinical. "The Corvinus house claimed Thornhaven by right of blood spilled. My house contested the claim. We've been at war ever since." They emerged from the tree line, and Alara saw the manor for the first time in 5 years. Thornhaven loomed against the darkening sky, its windows empty and black, its stone facade scarred with something that looked disturbingly like claw marks. The rose gardens her mother had tended were wild tangles now, choked with thorns. "It looks dead," she whispered. "It is. For the living, at least." He led her, not to the main entrance, but around to the eastern wing, to a servant's door she'd forgotten existed. "Stay close. Don't touch anything unless I tell you to." Inside, the darkness was absolute. Alara could see nothing, but she heard him moving with perfect confidence. His footsteps, somehow silent on the stone floors she knew creaked. A moment later, light flared candlelight, warm and golden. He held a silver candelabra, its 3 flames pushing back the shadows just enough to reveal the corridor. Dust lay thick on everything. The paintings on the walls hung crooked, their subjects' eyes seeming to follow her movement. "This way," he said. He led her deeper into the manor. Down corridors she recognized and some she didn't, until they reached a door she'd never seen before. When he opened it, stone steps spiraled downward into blackness. "The catacombs," Alara said, her throat tight. "My father forbade anyone to go down there, because he knew what waited below." The man descended without hesitation. Also because he was intelligent enough to fear it. Alara hesitated at the threshold. Everything in her screamed warning this was madness, following a monster into the dark, into crypts that had frightened even her stern, unshakable father. But behind her lay the compromised manor and the forest where things with red eyes hunted. Before her lay, what? Answers, at least. And perhaps the only person if he was a person who might keep her alive until dawn. She followed him down. The stairs seemed endless, spiraling deeper and deeper until Alara lost all sense of direction. The air grew colder with each step, carrying scents of old stone and earth and something like incense. When they finally reached the bottom, she found herself in a chamber that stole her breath. It was beautiful. The catacombs weren't the crude burial vaults she'd imagined. They were halls of carved stone, their walls covered in symbols she didn't recognize, their vaulted ceilings supported by columns that bore the marks of ancient craftsmanship. Candles burned in iron sconces, dozens of them, their flames unwavering in the still air. "Someone lives here," she said. "I do. For now." He set down the candelabra and moved to light more candles. As the room brightened, Alara saw the evidence of habitation: a desk covered in papers and maps, shelves lined with books whose spines bore no titles she recognized, and in the corner, a narrow bed made up with surprising care. "You've been here 6 months," she said slowly. "Guarding Thornhaven? Claiming it?" There's a difference. He turned to face her fully, and in the candlelight she could see him clearly for the first time. He was younger than she'd thought, or at least, he looked younger. Perhaps 30, with dark hair that fell to his collar, and features that would have been beautiful if they weren't so cold. The law of houses is simple. Hold ground for a year uncontested, and it becomes yours by right. I've held Thornhaven for 6 months. The Corvinus house will do anything to prevent me from reaching 12. Why? Alara moved closer to the desk, studying the maps. They showed Thornhaven and the surrounding countryside, marked with symbols and notations in a language she didn't know. What's so important about one estate? Location. Thornhaven sits at the crossing of 3 territories. Whoever holds it controls trade routes, blood supplies, and access to the coast. He watched her examine the maps with an expression she couldn't read. It's also the site of the old treaty stone. Peace accords signed here carry weight throughout the realm, the vampire realm, Alara said quietly. He went very still. Yes. And you are? Keeper of House Valenti, Lord of the Northern Territories. Your uninvited guest. He inclined his head in a mockery of a formal introduction. My name is Cashin Valenti. Alara met his eyes dark again, depthless, but no longer burning. And the others? The ones who attacked me. Corvinus hunters. Feral things, barely more intelligent than beasts. They were sent to kill you. Why? I'm nothing. I don't matter to your war. You matter because your blood carries the Ashford claim to Thornhaven. Cashin's voice was gentle now, almost kind, which somehow made the words worse. While you live, you can contest ownership. Sign the estate over to me, and the Corvinus house loses all legal ground for attack. Understanding crashed over her like cold water. That's why someone forged a letter. To bring me here, yes. To kill me, yes. Alara sank into the chair by the desk, her legs finally giving out. My entire family is dead. I have no home, no prospects, no allies. And now I'm trapped in a crypt with a vampire, hunted by other vampires. Because I inherited an estate I never wanted. That's an accurate summary, Cashin said, despite everything, the horror, the impossibility, the sheer absurdity of her situation. Alara laughed. It burst out of her sharp and slightly hysterical, echoing off the stone walls. When she finally stopped, she found Cashin watching her with something that might have been concern. I'm not mad, she said. I didn't think you were. What happens now? Cashin was quiet for a long moment. Now you rest. At dawn, we'll decide what comes next, and if the Corvinus house attacks before dawn. His smile was cold and sharp as broken glass. Then they'll learn why House Valenti has held the North for 300 years. Chapter 3. The Watcher in the Dark. Alara didn't sleep. How could she, knowing what prowled the darkness above? She sat in the chair by Cashin's desk, wrapped in a blanket he'd offered without comment, and watched him move through the catacombs with the ease of someone who belonged to shadow. He didn't sleep either. Perhaps he couldn't. She didn't know the rules that govern creatures like him. Instead, he checked the wards he'd set at the stairway entrance, reinforcing symbols she couldn't read, with what looked like his own blood, drawn fresh from a cut on his palm that healed before her eyes. Does it hurt? She asked, breaking the silence that had stretched between them for over an hour. Cashin glanced back at her. Does what hurt? Healing that fast? The cut, I saw it close. No, he returned to his work, his movements precise and methodical. Pain fades quickly for my kind. It's one of the few mercies of immortality. And the few curses? His hand paused, just for a moment. You're curious. I'm trapped in a crypt with a vampire lord while his enemies hunt me. Curiosity seems safer than panic. Alara pulled the blanket tighter around her shoulders. You said I could ask questions later. It's later now. Cashin finished the last symbol and stood, wiping his palm clean on a dark cloth. When he turned to face her, his expression was unreadable. What do you want to know? Everything. She gestured around the chamber. Start with why you sleep in a crypt, when you could have any room in the manor above. The catacombs are defensible. One entrance, stone on all sides, and ground sanctified by centuries of the dead. Corvinus hunters are strong, but they won't enter consecrated earth without their master's direct command. He moved to the shelves, running his fingers along the spines of ancient books. And I don't sleep, Miss Ashford. I rest. But sleep, as you know, it is something I surrendered 200 years ago. 200 years. The number should have shocked her, but somehow it fit the way he moved, the weight in his voice, the weariness that clung to him like a second skin. The sun, she said. Can it kill you? Not kill. But it weakens us, burns us, drives us into torpor if we're exposed too long. He selected a book and brought it to the desk, setting it before her. We're strongest in full darkness, vulnerable at noon. Dawn and dusk are complicated. Alara looked at the book. Its cover was bound in leather so old it had gone black, its pages edged in gold leaf. The text inside was handwritten in the same language she'd seen on the maps. What is this? The Codex Noctis. The laws that govern all vampire houses. Cashin leaned against the desk, his arms crossed. Read it, if you like. Though I doubt you'll understand the language. Then why show it to me? Because you should know what rules bind the creatures hunting you. Knowledge is armor, Miss Ashford. Especially for someone as defenseless as you are. The word stung more than it should have. I'm not defenseless. No? He raised an eyebrow. What weapons do you carry? What training do you have? You couldn't outrun the hunters in the forest. You can't outfight them. If I hadn't been there, I know. Alara cut him off, her voice sharp. I would be dead. You've made that abundantly clear. I'm not trying to wound your pride. I'm trying to keep you alive. Why? She stood, letting the blanket fall away, and faced him directly. You said yourself I'm a complication. That my blood makes me valuable to both houses. Why not just take what you want? Force me to sign over Thornhaven and be done with it? Cashin went very still. Is that what you think I am? I don't know what you are. Monster or savior, or something in between. Alara's hands clenched into fists at her sides. But I know everyone wants something. So tell me, Lord Valenti, what do you want from me? The silence stretched between them, heavy and charged. Cashin's dark eyes held hers, and for a moment she thought she saw something flicker in their depths, something raw and almost human. I want, he said slowly, for you to survive this. Because too many innocents have died in this war already, and I'm tired of counting bodies. That's not an answer. It's the only one I have. He turned away, moving back to the wards. You should rest. Dawn is 3 hours away, and a sound cut through his words. Faint, but unmistakable footsteps on the stairs above. Multiple sets descending fast. Cashin's entire demeanor changed in an instant. The weariness vanished, replaced by cold, lethal focus. Get behind me, now. Alara obeyed without thinking, her heart suddenly hammering. I thought you said they wouldn't enter consecrated ground, they won't enter uninvited. But there are ways to break a sanctification. He moved to stand between her and the stairway, his body coiled like a spring. Stay silent. Don't move unless I tell you to. The footsteps grew louder, closer. Alara could hear voices now low, guttural sounds that didn't quite form words. The candles flickered, their flames bending toward the doorway as though pulled by an invisible wind. Then the temperature dropped. Alara's breath misted in the air. Ice crystals formed on the stone walls, spreading in geometric patterns that hurt to look at. The sanctified wards Cashin had drawn began to smoke, their symbols writhing as though trying to escape the stone. Impossible, Cashin breathed. That level of power, a figure appeared in the doorway. It was tall, impossibly so, its form more shadow than substance. When it spoke, its voice filled the chamber like the tolling of a cracked bell. Valenti, the word carried centuries of hatred. You shelter what belongs to Corvinus. Surrender the girl, and your death will be swift. Cashin's laugh was cold as winter steel. Marcus, I should have known. Only you would be arrogant enough to breach sanctified ground. The old laws are ending. Brother. The shadow figure stepped fully into the chamber, and Alara saw its face, beautiful and terrible, with eyes like molten gold. The houses are choosing sides. War is coming, and Thornhaven will be its first battlefield. Then let it come. The girl is under my protection. Your protection? Marcus's smile was a slash of white in the darkness. How touching. Tell me, has she agreed to your protection? Or does she even know what you are? What you've done? Alara felt Cashin tense. Leave, now, while I'm still offering you that choice. I think not. Marcus's gaze slid past Cashin to fix on Alara, and she felt the weight of it like physical pressure. Come here, child. Let me see the face of the Ashford heir. Don't, Cashin said, his voice low and urgent. Don't look at him. Don't move. But it was already too late. Alara's feet were moving of their own accord, carrying her forward step by trembling step. She tried to stop, tried to scream, but her body wouldn't obey. Marcus's eyes held hers, golden and depthless, and she felt herself falling into them. Cashin moved between them, breaking the line of sight. The compulsion shattered like glass. Alara gasped, stumbling backward, her will suddenly her own again. Thrall commands. Cashin's voice was deadly quiet. That's forbidden between houses, Marcus. You've just given me grounds for formal challenge. Challenge accepted. Marcus smiled. Winner takes Thornhaven. And the girl. Chapter 4. Blood and bargains. The air itself seemed to hold its breath. Alara watched as the two vampires faced each other across the candlelit chamber, their stillness more terrifying than any movement. She had seen Cashin fight the hunters in the forest, had witnessed his inhuman speed and strength. But this felt different. This felt like standing between two thunderstorms, deciding which would break first. The girl is not a prize to be won, Cashin said, his voice eerily calm. And formal challenge requires a neutral arbiter from the Council of Houses. You know this, Marcus? The council fractured 6 months ago when your house killed 3 Corvinus elders during your precious peace summit. Marcus circled slowly, his shadow form seeming to pulse and shift. There are no neutral arbiters left. Only enemies waiting to declare themselves. My house didn't kill your elders. Someone else orchestrated that massacre, and you know it, do I? Marcus's golden eyes narrowed. All I know is that 3 of my blood family entered Thornhaven under a white flag and left in pieces. Your scent was all over the killing room, Valenti. Something flickered across Cashin's face, pain, quickly masked. I was trying to save them. Liar. The word cracked like a whip. You wanted this war. You wanted an excuse to claim Thornhaven and expand your territory. If I wanted war, you'd already be Ash. Cashin's hands flexed at his sides. I've been trying to prevent exactly this enough. Marcus's form solidified, becoming fully corporeal. He was broader than Cashin, older looking, with silver threading through his dark hair. I didn't come here to debate history. I came for what's mine. She's not yours, Cashin said flatly. Her blood says otherwise. The Ashford line has served Corvinus House for 3 generations. When her great-grandfather needed our protection from human hunters, we granted it in exchange for fealty and first rights to any Ashford property. Marcus's smile was sharp. Thornhaven belongs to Corvinus by ancient contract. The girl is just a formality. Alara's mind reeled. That's not true. My family never. Your family kept many secrets, child. Marcus's attention fixed on her again, and she felt the terrible pull of his gaze. Your great-grandfather knew what lurked in the dark. He made a deal to protect his descendants. Pity it failed so spectacularly. Don't listen to him, Cashin said, not taking his eyes off Marcus. He's manipulating you. Am I? Tell me, Valenti, have you mentioned what happens to humans who shelter with vampires too long? How their blood begins to change, to call to us? Marcus took a step closer. Have you told her that every moment she spends breathing your air, she becomes more enthralled, more susceptible? Ice flooded Alar's veins. She looked at Cashin, searching his face for denial. She found none. It's a slow process, Cashin said quietly, still not looking at her. And it can be reversed if you leave within a few days. I was going to tell you when, after she was too bound to you to leave. Marcus laughed, the sound hollow and cruel. You see, child? This is what Valenti honor looks like. Lies wrapped in protection, all to serve his own ends. Alara felt something crack inside her chest, not quite trust, but the fragile possibility of it. You knew this would happen. You brought me down here knowing I brought you down here to save your life. Cashin finally turned to face her, and his expression was raw, unguarded. Yes, prolonged exposure creates a bond. But the alternative was letting you die in the forest or the manor, where Corvinus hunters could reach you. I chose the option that kept you breathing. How noble, Marcus said. Shall we tell her the rest? About what happens when a human stays with a vampire past the point of no return. How their will becomes forfeit, their thoughts no longer their own. That won't happen. Cashin cut him off. Because she'll leave Thornhaven tomorrow, at dawn, with safe passage and enough gold to start anywhere she chooses. The words should have been a relief. Instead, they felt like abandonment. And Thornhaven? Alara asked, hating how small her voice sounded. You said you needed my signature to claim it. I did. I do. Cashin's jaw tightened. But not at the cost of your autonomy. I won't become what he is. He gestured toward Marcus. I won't enslave you to win a war. Marcus's expression darkened. Such pretty principles. Let's see how long they last when your house falls and the Corvinus Legion burns the northern territories to bedrock. He turned back to Alara. You have a choice, child. Come with me now, willingly, and I'll ensure your safety. Sign over Thornhaven to Corvinus House, and I'll release you from all ancestral debts. You'll be free, truly free to live your mortal life however you choose. Don't, Cashin said, his voice tight with warning. Marcus doesn't make bargains. He makes traps. And what would you call this? Marcus gestured around the catacombs. Sanctuary? She's your prisoner, Valenti, whether you admit it or not. At least I'm honest about what I am. Alara looked between them, the vampire who'd saved her life and the one who offered her freedom. Both were using her. Both wanted Thornhaven. Neither had asked what she wanted. What if I refuse you both? She asked. The silence that followed was absolute. Refuse? Marcus repeated, as though the word was foreign. What if I don't sign anything? Don't choose either house? Alara's hands were shaking, but she forced herself to stand straighter. What if I claim Thornhaven for myself? Cashin's eyes widened. Alara. No, why not? It's my inheritance. My family's estate, regardless of what contracts my great-grandfather made. She met Marcus's golden stare directly, fighting the urge to look away. If vampire law respects blood claims, then mine is stronger than either of yours. For a moment, Marcus looked genuinely surprised. Then he began to laugh, a sound like breaking stone. Oh, This is delicious. The little mouse has teeth. He clapped his hands together, the sound echoing off the walls. Very well, Ashford. Claim your estate. Hold it against both our houses. See how long you survive. She won't survive the week, Cashin said, his voice rough with frustration. Marcus. You know she can't she? She has the blood right, as she said. And if she's clever, she might even find allies. Marcus's smile was all predator now. Of course, she'd need to understand vampire law, speak the old tongue, navigate house politics without making a fatal mistake. He tilted his head. She'd need a teacher. The trap snapped shut with almost audible force. No, Cashin said immediately. Absolutely not. Why not? You offered her protection already. Extend it. Teach her what she needs to know to hold Thornhaven independently. Marcus's eyes glittered with malice. Unless you're afraid she'll actually succeed? Afraid a human might prove stronger than your pride allows? Elara saw it then the web Marcus had woven. If Cashin refused, he'd look weak, cowardly. If he agreed, he'd be bound to help her, unable to claim Thornhaven for himself without breaking his word. Either way, Marcus won. Time to strengthen his own position. But Elara also saw something else, an opportunity. I accept Lord Marcus's suggestion, she said, before Cashin could refuse. If Lord Valenti is willing to teach me, I'll claim Thornhaven as neutral ground. No house will hold it. It will be what my father intended, a place for peace accords. Nothing more. Cashin stared at her as though she'd lost her mind. You have no idea what you're agreeing to. Then teach me. She held his gaze, willing him to understand. Or let me die trying. Either way, it's my choice. Chapter 5. Threads of trust. Elara woke to the sound of movement in the outer chamber. For a disorienting moment, she didn't know where she was. Then memory crashed back: the catacombs, the vampires, her impossible bargain. She sat up, her body aching from sleeping on the pallet, and realized the light filtering through the doorway had changed. Sunset. She'd slept through the entire day. She found Cashin at the desk, surrounded by books and papers, his attention fixed on a map marked with symbols. She was beginning to recognize. He'd changed clothes, black still, but simpler, without the formal coat he'd worn before. His hair was tied back, revealing the sharp angles of his face. You're awake, he said, without looking up. Good. We've lost enough time. Elara moved closer, studying the map. It showed Thornhaven and the surrounding estates, with different colored marks indicating. What? Territory? What are you looking for? Patterns. The Corvinus elders were killed in the south drawing room, but their blood trail led to the eastern garden before vanishing completely. He tapped a location on the map. Whoever killed them knew about the underground passages. They used them to escape. Underground passages? Elara leaned over the desk, her interest sharpening. I grew up here. I never knew there were passages, because your father had them sealed after his grandfather's death. He feared what they connected to. Cashin pulled out another sheet: architectural drawings of Thornhaven's foundation. But sealing them didn't make them disappear. Someone reopened at least one passage the night of the summit. Elara studied the drawings, trying to reconcile them with the manner she remembered. Here. She pointed to a section near the eastern wing. There was a door in the library that was always locked. My father forbade us from going near it. He said it led to unstable foundations, or to the passages he didn't want you finding. Cashin made a note on the map. We'll check it tonight. But first, your lessons. Come. He led her to a clear space in the chamber where he'd set out 2 chairs facing each other. Between them, a single candle burned, its flame steady in the still air. Sit, he instructed. Elara obeyed, and Cashin took the seat across from her, close enough that their knees nearly touched. This close, she could see details she'd missed before: the faint scars on his hands, the way his eyes weren't quite black but a very dark brown, and something else. A weariness that went deeper than physical exhaustion. The first defense against thrall commands is awareness, he said. When Marcus compelled you, you felt it, didn't you? That pulling sensation, like your will was being dragged out of your body. Elara nodded, suppressing a shudder at the memory. That feeling is your warning. Most humans ignore it, or mistake it for natural attraction or fear. But you recognized it as wrong. Cashin's gaze held hers. That instinct will keep you alive. Trust it. How do I fight it? You can't. Not completely. Thrall commands work through eye contact and will, and any vampire older than a century can overpower a human's resistance with enough focus. He leaned forward slightly. But you can make it harder. Make your will a moving target instead of a stationary one. I don't understand. Your mind is like a room with a door. Right now, that door is wide open. A vampire's thrall walks right in and rearranges the furniture. Cashin gestured to the candle between them. I'm going to teach you to close the door. Not lock it, you're not strong enough for that yet, but close it enough that a vampire has to work to open it. And work means time, which means escape. How? Focus on the flame. Not on me. Not on the room. Just the flame. His voice dropped, becoming almost hypnotic. See how it moves, how it breathes. Match your breathing to its rhythm. Slow, steady. Let everything else fade. Alara fixed her eyes on the candle. At first, her mind raced thinking about Thrall. Commands about the locked library door, about the way Cashin's voice seemed to fill the space between them. But gradually, as she breathed with the flame's flicker, the noise quieted. Good, Cashin murmured. Now, without looking away from the flame, feel my presence. I'm here, across from you, but you're not looking at me. You're anchored to something else. Alara could sense him, the cold that radiated from his body, the absolute stillness of him when he wasn't moving. But the flame held her attention, kept her centered. Now I'm going to try to pull your focus to me. Resist. Keep your anchor. His voice changed, gaining weight and command. Look at me, Alara. The compulsion hit like a wave. Her eyes wanted to move, her head wanted to turn, but the steady, breathing flame held her. She gripped the arms of the chair, her knuckles white, and kept her gaze fixed. Look at me. Stronger now, harder to resist. Her vision blurred at the edges, her neck muscles trembling with the effort of staying still, but she didn't move. Alara, look at me. This time, the command carried real power. The flame seemed to dim, her anchor slipping. She felt her head beginning to turn enough. Cashin's voice returned to normal, and the pressure vanished instantly. Alara gasped, slumping forward. Her whole body was shaking, drenched in cold sweat. You held for nearly a minute, Cashin said, and there was something like approval in his tone. That's impressive. Most humans break in seconds. That was you holding back, wasn't it? Alara managed, still catching her breath. Yes, a full thrall command from me would have broken your will in moments. But what you just learned, that anchoring technique, will work against younger vampires and weaker attempts. He stood, moving to pour water from a pitcher into a cup. Drink. She accepted the cup gratefully, the cool water soothing her raw throat. How often do I need to practice this? Every night until it becomes instinct. Eventually, you won't need the candle. You'll be able to create an anchor in your mind, something personal and strong that no vampire can easily manipulate. He paused. What did you think of while you held the flame? Alara considered lying, then decided against it. My sister, Caroline. I thought about how she used to read to me by candlelight when I was small. Something shifted in Cashin's expression. She died 6 months ago in the massacre. I'm sorry. Were you there? The question came out sharper than Alara intended. When it happened, were you in the room? Yes. No hesitation. No deflection. I was trying to negotiate a water rights agreement with the Corvinus representatives when something burst into the drawing room. It moved too fast to see clearly. By the time I understood what was happening, 2 elders were already down, and the third. I tried to save her. Cashin's hands clenched into fists. I carried her to the eastern garden, thinking the open air might slow the poison in her blood. But she died before I could get help. When the other vampires found me, I was covered in her blood, and she was ash in my arms. The raw pain in his voice was undeniable. Alara found herself believing him, though she'd sworn not to trust easily. My sister was in the manor that night, she said quietly. My father's letter said she died in the attack, but he never explained how. Cashin met her eyes. She was in the corridor outside the drawing room when the massacre started. She saw someone fleeing toward the eastern wing. She followed. Ice flooded Alara's veins, and I found her body in the library. The locked library. His voice was gentle now, carefully controlled. She'd been dead for hours by the time I got there. Whatever she saw, whoever she chased, they silenced her to protect their identity. Alara's cup slipped from her nerveless fingers, water spilling across the stone floor. You knew, this whole time. You knew my sister was murdered, specifically, and you didn't tell me. I didn't know you existed until tonight. Your father never mentioned having 2 daughters, because he disowned me. The words tasted like ash. I wasn't worthy of acknowledgement. Then he was a fool. Cashin knelt, beginning to clean up the spilled water with a cloth. Your sister died trying to find the truth. You're doing the same. Perhaps courage runs in your blood. Alara watched him work, this ancient creature, kneeling on stone floors to clean up after her clumsiness. The gesture was so unexpectedly human that it made her chest ache. The library, she said. We need to search it. Tonight? I know, but not yet. You need food and more training. He stood, wringing out the cloth. You held against my thrall for 1 minute. By the end of this week, you'll hold for 5, and when Marcus returns, you'll look him in the eyes and not flinch. And then we find who killed your sister, and we make them answer for it. Chapter 6. The sealed library moved through Thornhaven's darkened corridors like ghosts. Cashin led the way, a single candle in his hand, casting more shadow than light. Alara followed close behind, her heart beat loud in her ears. The manor felt different at night, not empty, but watching, waiting, as though the walls themselves remembered what had happened here 6 months ago. Stay close, Cashin murmured. The wards I've set will keep Corvinus hunters out, but they won't stop something that's already inside. You think the killer is still here? Alara whispered. I think whoever orchestrated the massacre knew Thornhaven intimately. Its passages, its secrets, its weaknesses. He paused at a junction, his head tilting as though listening to something she couldn't hear. They may be long gone, or they may be waiting to see what we discover. The thought sent ice down Alara's spine, but she forced herself forward. Caroline had walked these halls looking for answers. The least Alara could do was finish what her sister had started. They reached the library after what felt like an eternity of silent corridors. The double doors stood closed, their dark wood carved with patterns Alara remembered tracing with her fingers as a child. Vines and roses, twisting together in intricate knots. Cashin set down the candle and examined the doors carefully. They've been opened recently, within the last month. How can you tell? The dust pattern. And this, he pointed to the lock, where fresh scratches marred the old metal. Someone picked this. Someone with modern tools, not the iron keys your father would have used. Corvinus hunters searching for evidence? Possibly. Or someone else looking for what your sister found. Cashin produced a slim piece of metal from his coat and worked it into the lock. After a moment, something clicked. Ready? Alara nodded, though her palms were slick with sweat. The door swung open with a groan of protest. The library beyond was vast. 2 stories of floor-to-ceiling shelves that had once held her family's collection. Now, in the candlelight, Alara could see the devastation. Books lay scattered across the floor, their pages torn and scattered. Shelves had been overturned. Furniture was smashed. And in the center of the room, dark stains marked the Persian rug her mother had imported from Constantinople. Blood. Old blood. Gone brown with time. Caroline. Alara breathed. Her legs suddenly weak. Cashin caught her elbow, steadying her. I'm sorry. I should have warned you. No, I needed to see. Alara pulled away gently, forcing herself to look at the scene with clear eyes. Tell me what happened. Everything you know. Cashin moved into the library, his steps careful to avoid disturbing anything. I found her here at dawn, after searching for survivors all night. She was lying there. He pointed to the largest blood stain, with defensive wounds on her hands and arms. She fought. Against what? I couldn't tell. The scent was confused vampire blood mixed with human, and something else. Something I didn't recognize. He knelt by the stain, his expression distant. But she'd managed to wound her attacker. There was a blood trail leading to that wall. He indicated the far side of the library, where a massive bookshelf stood flush against the stone. The locked door, Alara said, understanding dawning. It's behind the shelf? Yes. Your sister found the passage entrance. She wounded whoever she was chasing, and they fled through it. Cashin stood, moving to examine the bookshelf. I tried to follow that night, but the passage had been collapsed from the inside. It took me 3 months to clear it enough to explore. And what did you find? His expression darkened. A maze of tunnels extending throughout Thornhaven and beyond. Most are ancient, predating the manor by centuries. Some sections are newer, carved within the last 100 years. He ran his hand along the bookshelf's edge. And signs that they've been used recently. Very recently. Alara joined him at the shelf. Up close, she could see the mechanism hidden in the carved molding, a catch disguised as decorative scrollwork. How do we open it? Like this. Cashin pressed 2 points simultaneously, and the entire bookshelf swung outward on hidden hinges, revealing a dark opening in the stone wall. The smell that emerged was overwhelming, damp earth, old stone, and underneath it all, the sickly sweet scent of decay. Something died down there, Alara said, fighting nausea. Many things have died down there over the centuries. These passages were used for smuggling, for hiding, and he paused. For feeding. Feeding? Your great-grandfather's bargain with Corvinus House included certain provisions. The passages gave the vampires discreet access to the estate and its residents. Cashin's voice was carefully neutral. The arrangement was supposed to be consensual, blood given freely in exchange for protection. But not all vampires are honorable. Alara understood what he wasn't saying. My great-grandfather sold access to his own household, in exchange for keeping his family safe from human hunters. Yes, it was a devil's bargain, but he thought it was the lesser evil. Cashin lifted the candle, its light barely penetrating the darkness beyond. Are you certain you want to continue? Once we go down there, we're committed. The passages can be disorienting, easy to get lost in. I'm certain. Alara's resolve hardened. Caroline came down here alone, without help. I have you. We'll find what she found. Something flickered in Cashin's expression, surprise, perhaps, or respect. Then stay close. Touch nothing without asking me first. And if I tell you to run, you run. Understood? Understood. They descended into darkness. The passage was narrow, forcing them to walk single file. The walls were rough stone, slick with moisture, and the air grew colder with each step. Cashin moved with perfect confidence, his night vision allowing him to navigate easily. Elara kept one hand on the wall, the other clutching the back of his coat, trusting him to guide her safely. After what felt like an eternity, the passage opened into a wider chamber. Cashin raised the candle, and Elara gasped. The chamber was octagonal, its walls covered in carvings that seemed to writhe in the flickering light. Symbols like those in the Codex Noctis, but older, cruder. And in the center of the room stood a stone altar, its surface stained dark with centuries of use. What is this place? Elara whispered. A feeding chamber. One of the old ones from before the treaties between houses. Cashin moved closer to the altar, examining it carefully. This hasn't been used in generations. The bloodstains are ancient, but someone's been here recently. Elara pointed to the floor, where footprints disturbed the thick dust. Multiple sets, some booted, some bare. Look, they lead to that tunnel. Cashin followed her gaze to one of 3 passages branching from the chamber. That direction leads toward the eastern garden, where the Corvinus elder died in my arms. Then that's where we go. Elara, wait, but she was already moving. Her fear transformed into determination. She heard Cashin curse softly behind her. Then his footsteps, as he hurried to catch up. The passage slopped downward, growing narrower, and the smell of decay intensified. Elara's stomach churned, but she pushed forward. The passage ended abruptly at a cave in stones and earth piled high, blocking further progress. But at the base of the rubble, something gleamed in the candlelight. Elara knelt, reaching for it carefully. It was a brooch. Silver, worked in an intricate pattern of thorns and roses. And pinned to it was a scrap of fabric, fine silk, the color of midnight. This was Caroline's, Elara said, her voice breaking. My mother gave it to her on her 18th birthday. Cashin knelt beside her, his expression grave. She left it as a marker. She knew whoever was chasing her might kill her, so she left evidence. Evidence of what? Elara turned the brooch over, and her breath caught. Engraved on the back was a symbol she'd seen before in the Codex Noctis, on the maps in Cashin's study, a house sigil. But not Corvinus or Valenti. That's House Morvain, Cashin said softly. They were destroyed 200 years ago in the War of 3 Moons. There are no surviving members. Then who? Sound echoed through the passages. Footsteps. Multiple sets. Moving fast and getting closer. Cashin grabbed Elara's arm. Run. Now. Chapter 7. The Sigidi ran. Cashin pulled Elara back through the passage, his hand gripping hers with bruising force. Behind them, the footsteps grew louder, accompanied by sounds that made Elara's blood freeze, clicking, scraping, something between a hiss and a growl. What are they? She gasped. Feral, Cashin said, not slowing. Vampires who've lost themselves to bloodlust. They shouldn't be here. Someone sent them. They burst into the octagonal chamber, and Cashin released her hand long enough to shove the bookshelf mechanism. Nothing happened. He tried again, cursing in a language Elara didn't know. The passage is sealed from above, he said, his voice tight. We can't go back the way we came. Then where? This way. He grabbed her hand again and pulled her toward one of the other tunnels. This leads to the old wine cellars. If we can reach them before the first feral exploded into the chamber. It had been human once, perhaps. Now it was something twisted, its limbs too long, its mouth opened impossibly wide to reveal rows of needle-sharp teeth. Its eyes were clouded white, blind, but somehow still tracking their movement. Cashin shoved Elara behind him. Don't look at it. Don't run. Just back toward that tunnel slowly. Elara obeyed, her heart hammering so hard she thought it might burst. The feral's head swiveled, following the sound of her breathing. It crouched, preparing to spring. Cashin moved between them, fast as lightning. His hand shot out, catching the feral by its throat before it could leap. The creature thrashed, its claws raking across his arm, drawing blood that looked black in the candlelight. Go! Cashin roared, throwing the feral against the far wall with enough force to crack stone. Elara ran into the tunnel, Cashin right behind her. More ferals poured into the chamber. 3, 4, 5. They moved like insects, crawling across walls and ceiling, their movements jerky and unnatural. The tunnel was barely wide enough for one person. Elara's shoulders scraped against rough stone as she pushed forward, the darkness absolute except for the faint glow of Cashin's candle behind her. She could hear him fighting, the sounds of impact and tearing flesh, but she didn't look back. Couldn't look back. The passage opened into a larger space, the wine cellars, just as Cashin had promised. Racks of bottles lined the walls, most broken now, the floor sticky with ancient wine. Elara stumbled to a stop, whirling around. Cashin emerged from the tunnel, blood streaming from a dozen wounds. He was breathing hard, something she hadn't seen him do before, and his eyes were rimmed with red. "Help me barricade the entrance," he said, already moving to drag a heavy wine rack toward the opening. Alara grabbed the other side, her muscles screaming in protest. Together they wrestled it into position just as the first feral reached the tunnel mouth. The creature slammed against the rack, sending bottles crashing to the floor. "That won't hold long," Cashin said. "We need to reach the main house. Get to defensible ground. You're hurt." Alara stared at the wounds covering his arms and chest. They were healing, but slowly to slowly. "You're weakening. I haven't fed properly in days." "It's fine," but his voice was strained, and when he moved toward the cellar stairs, he staggered slightly. "It's not fine." Alara caught his arm, feeling the cold radiating from his skin. "You can barely stand, and there are at least 5 of those things between us and safety." 6, Cashin corrected. His eyes fixed on something behind her. Alara turned slowly. A feral crouched on the wine racks, having climbed through a ventilation shaft too small for anything that still had bones. It watched them with its clouded eyes, its head tilting in that horrible insect-like way. "When I move," Cashin said quietly, "you run for the stairs. Don't stop. Don't look back. Get to the catacombs and seal the entrance. The wards there are strongest. I'm not leaving you. You don't have a choice." He pushed her toward the stairs even as the feral leaped. What happened next seemed to unfold in slow motion. The feral came down like a striking snake. Its claws extended toward Cashin's throat. He moved to intercept it, but his injuries slowed him by crucial seconds. The creature's claws found flesh, tearing deep, and Alara moved. She didn't think. There was no time for thought. She grabbed a broken bottle from the floor and swung it with all her strength, catching the feral in the side of its head. The glass shattered, and the creature shrieked, a sound like metal scraping metal. It turned on her, its blind eyes somehow finding her face. Cashin's hand closed around its skull and twisted. The crack echoed through the cellar. The feral went limp. For a moment, silence. Then the wine rack barricading the tunnel exploded inward, and the others poured through. "Run," Cashin said again. But this time Alara was already moving. They took the stairs 2 at a time. Cashin, limping now, one hand pressed to the wound on his neck. Blood seeped between his fingers, too much blood, even for a vampire. Behind them, the ferals scrambled up the stairs, their clicking, scraping sounds echoing off stone walls. The cellar stairs led to the main kitchen. Alara burst through the door into moonlight streaming through broken windows. The kitchen was a ruin, furniture overturned, dishes smashed, scorch marks on the walls from some old fire. Cashin stumbled against the doorframe, his face gray. "The catacombs. East wing. Servant's entrance. Can you find it?" "Yes, but go. I'll hold them here." His eyes met hers, and for the first time since she'd met him, she saw real fear in them. Not for himself, for her. "Please, Alara, let me protect you." No, the word came out steady, certain. "You taught me that everyone deserves a choice. I choose to stay. You'll die, then I'll die free." She picked up a heavy iron pan from the floor, weighing it in her hands. "Besides, you're in no condition to fight alone. You need help." "I need blood," Cashin said, the words forced out through gritted teeth. "I'm too weak to face them all. I can't protect you like this." The ferals reached the top of the stairs. Alara looked at Cashin's gray face, at the blood soaking his clothes, at the way he swayed on his feet. She thought of Caroline, fighting alone in the library. She thought of her 5 years in London, surviving through grit and determination. She thought of every time someone had told her she was too weak, too breakable to human. "Then take my blood," she said. Cashin's eyes widened. "What? You said vampires need permission. I'm giving it." She held out her wrist. "Take what you need to fight. Save us both." "Alara, no. The bond, it will change things between us. You don't understand what you're offering. I understand that we die here if you don't." The ferals were through the door now, spreading out across the kitchen. "Please, Cashin, trust me the way I'm trusting you." Chapter 8. Blood oaths. Time collapsed into a single heartbeat. Cashin stared at her outstretched wrist, conflict warring across his face. Behind them, the ferals circled closer, their movements predatory and patient. They sensed weakness, and they were waiting for the moment to strike. "If I do this," Cashin said, his voice raw, "there's no going back. A blood bond between vampire and human isn't like feeding from the unwilling. It's consent given freely, and it binds. You'll feel what I feel. Know what I am in ways that will change how you see everything." "I know." Alara's hand didn't waver. "Do it." Cashin caught her wrist with trembling fingers. For a moment, he simply held it, his thumb pressing against her pulse point. Then he looked up at her, and his eyes were no longer dark, they were crimson, burning with hunger and something else. Something almost like anguish. "Forgive me," he whispered. His teeth found her wrist. The pain was sharp and immediate, but it lasted only a second before something else took over. Warmth flooded through Alara's body, starting at the wound and spreading outward in waves. She gasped, her knees buckling, and Cashin caught her with his free arm, holding her steady as he drank. It wasn't like she'd imagined. There was no horror, no violation. Instead, she felt connected, as though a door in her mind had opened, and Cashin was there on the other side, his presence vast and ancient and unexpectedly gentle. She felt his hunger, yes, but underneath it was something deeper, loneliness that spanned centuries, grief for losses she couldn't name, and a desperate, fierce need to protect her. "I'm sorry," his voice echoed in her mind, though his mouth never left her wrist. "I never wanted this for you." "I know," she thought back, and somehow knew he heard her. "Fight now. Regret later." He released her wrist, and Alara watched in amazement as the wounds closed instantly, leaving only 2 small scars like silver crescents. But the change in Cashin was dramatic. Color returned to his face. His eyes blazed crimson. The wounds covering his body sealed themselves, and when he straightened, there was no trace of the weakness that had nearly killed him. He looked at her with something like wonder. "Your blood is strong. Stronger than any humans I've tasted." "Family trait," Alara managed, still dizzy from the bond's intensity. "We're apparently good at making deals with vampires," a feral shrieked, breaking the moment. Cashin moved so fast he blurred, placing himself between Alara and the attacking creatures. But this time, he didn't move alone. Alara felt it through the bond, his intention, his strategy, his need for her to move left while he went right. She obeyed instinctively, grabbing the iron pan and swinging hard at the feral closest to her. The creature dodged, but she'd expected that, felt Cashin's tactical mind guiding her movements. She dropped low, letting the feral overextend, and Cashin's hand shot past her shoulder to catch it by the throat. They moved like a dance, anticipating each other's actions through the blood bond. When 3 ferals rushed Cashin at once, Alara threw her pan at the 4th that tried to flank him, buying him the split second needed to dispatch the others. When a feral came at her from above, she felt Cashin's warning through the bond and rolled aside just as he caught the creature mid-leap and slammed it into the stone floor hard enough to shatter bone. Within minutes, the kitchen was silent except for their breathing. 6 ferals lay broken and still. Alara leaned against the table, her heart racing, the iron pen heavy in her trembling hands. Through the bond, she felt Cashin's satisfaction, his relief, and underneath it all, his wonder at how well they'd fought together. "You followed every tactical impulse perfectly," he said, not looking at her as he checked the bodies to ensure they were truly dead. "Most humans freeze or panic when they feel a vampire's thoughts in their mind. You adapted." "I didn't have much choice." Alara set down the pan, examining the silver scars on her wrist. They didn't hurt, but she could feel them, not physically, but in some deeper way, as though they anchored the bond between them. "How long does this last?" "The blood bond?" Cashin finally turned to face her, his eyes fading back to dark. "It depends. A few days for a simple feeding. But when freely given in a moment of life and death," he trailed off, his expression troubled. "It could be permanent." "Permanent," Alara repeated. The word should have frightened her. Instead, she felt only curiosity. "What does that mean exactly?" "It means I'll always be able to sense your location, your emotional state, whether you're in danger. And you'll sense me the same way." He moved closer, stopping just out of reach. "It means neither of us will ever be entirely alone again, even when we're apart. Some bonded pairs find it comforting. Others find it suffocating." Alara guessed. "Yes." His voice was barely a whisper. "I swore I'd never do this to anyone." After he stopped abruptly, walls slamming down in his mind. Even through the bond, Alara could feel him retreating. "After what?" "It doesn't matter. What matters is that you're bound to me now, and that changes everything." Cashin gestured to the dead ferals. "Whoever sent these will know they failed. They'll send something worse. And they'll know you're bonded to me, which makes you a target for anyone who wants to hurt House Valenti." Alara processed this, trying to separate her own emotions from what was bleeding through the bond. Cashin's guilt, his fear for her, his anger at himself for allowing this to happen. Can the bond be broken? Not easily. It would require a ritual, and he met her eyes. "And I'm not sure I could survive it. A bond this strong, formed in mutual consent and desperation, breaking it would be like tearing out part of my soul." The admission hung between them, raw and vulnerable. Through the bond, Alara felt the truth of it, felt how deeply the connection had already rooted itself in him, twining around something broken and lonely that had been there long before she existed. "Then we don't break it," she said simply. "We use it." "Use it?" "You said bonded pairs can sense each other, communicate without words. That's an advantage, isn't it?" Alara's mind was already racing ahead. "If we're investigating the massacre together, Being able to coordinate silently could save our lives. You're treating this like a tactical asset? There was disbelief in Cashin's voice. But also something that might have been relief, isn't it? You needed blood to survive. I gave it. Now we're stronger together than apart. She picked up the pan again, testing its weight. Besides, I'm already bound to Thornhaven by blood. Adding one more binding doesn't seem like such a terrible fate. You're remarkable, Cashin said softly. Terrifying but remarkable. Before Alara could respond, the bond flared with sudden warning. Cashin's head snapped toward the windows, his entire body going tense. What is it? She asked, already knowing the answer through their connection. More coming. Not ferals this time. His expression hardened. Corvinus hunters. A full cohort. And they're not alone. Through the bond, Alara felt what he sensed: multiple presences approaching Thornhaven from all directions. At least 20 vampires, moving with coordinated precision. This wasn't a random attack. This was a siege. They know about the brooch, Alara realized. They know we found evidence linking House Morvain to the massacre. Yes, Cashin moved to the window, his silhouette dark against the moonlight. And they're going to ensure we never share that evidence with anyone. What do we do? He turned back to her, and through the bond, she felt his decision crystallize. We fight, and we survive long enough to get word to the other houses. If Morvain has survived in secret, if they've been orchestrating this war from the shadows, then both Corvinus and Valenti have been fighting the wrong enemy. Alara finished. Exactly. Cashin held out his hand. Ready to defend your inheritance, Miss Ashford? Alara took his hand, feeling the bond pulse between them like a second heartbeat. Ready, Lord Valenti. Together, they moved toward the coming storm. Chapter 9. Shadows and Elise. The catacombs had become their fortress. Cashin worked with ruthless efficiency, reinforcing the wards at every entrance while Alara gathered supplies from the manor above: weapons, water, anything that might prove useful in a siege. Through the bond, she felt his approval each time she made a smart choice. His concern when she ventured too far into the compromised sections of the house. Stay away from the west wing. His voice echoed in her mind as she passed a darkened corridor. 3 of them are circling there waiting. I know, she thought back. I can feel them through you. Like cold spots in the air. That's the bond adapting. You're learning to sense what I sensed. It was true. The world had changed since Cashin's bite. Colors seemed sharper in the darkness. She could hear things she'd never noticed before: the settling of old wood, the scurrying of mice in the walls, and underneath it all, the predatory silence of vampires moving through her family's home. Alara gathered the last of what she needed: silver candlesticks that could serve as weapons, a box of matches, rope from the stables, and made her way back toward the catacombs. As she descended the stone stairs, she felt Cashin's presence grow stronger, a warm pressure in her chest that said safe, protected. Home. The thought stopped her on the stairs. Home. She'd never felt that about Thornhaven, even as a child. The manor had been her father's domain, cold and full of rules. But the catacombs, these ancient chambers where Cashin had made his sanctuary, somehow felt more welcoming than anywhere she'd lived in 5 years. You're thinking too loud. Cashin's voice murmured in her mind, touched with amusement. Can you hear all my thoughts? Only the ones with strong emotion attached. And only because you're still learning to shield. A pause. But yes, I felt that. About home. Alara pushed through the final door, finding Cashin at his desk, the brooch they'd discovered laid out before him alongside maps and documents. He looked up as she entered, his dark eyes meeting hers. I didn't mean to invade your privacy, he said aloud. It's fine. I'm still getting used to this. She set down her supplies and moved to the desk. What have you found? The brooch is definitely Morvain house. See this pattern? He traced the thorns worked into the silver. Each house has a signature style in their craftsmanship. Morvain always incorporated thorns. They claimed descent from the first vampire, who was supposedly born from a rose blessed by moonlight and cursed by thorns. Romantic, Alara murmured. So House Morvain really existed. They were one of the oldest houses. Powerful, wealthy, and utterly ruthless. Cashin pulled out a leather-bound book, opening it to a page marked with faded ribbon. They fell 200 years ago, when 3 other houses united against them. The war lasted 7 years and cost thousands of lives, human and vampire both. When it ended, every member of House Morvain was supposed to be dead, but someone survived, or someone stole their sigil and is using it to frame them. Cashin's finger tapped the brooch thoughtfully. Either way, this is the evidence we need. Proof that the massacre wasn't just Valenti against Corvinus. There's a third player, and they want both our houses to destroy each other. Alara studied the maps, noting the marks Cashin had made. The hunters outside, they're not trying to kill us, are they? They're keeping us contained. Exactly. They want us trapped here with the evidence, unable to share it. He looked at her with something like pride. You're learning to think tactically. I had a good teacher. She felt warmth through the bond, his pleasure at the compliment. So how do we break the siege? We can't fight 20 vampires, even with the blood bond helping us coordinate. No, but we don't have to fight them all. Cashin stood, moving to a cabinet she hadn't noticed before. He opened it, revealing a collection of glass vials filled with dark liquid. Before your father died, he kept messenger ravens in the eastern tower. The tower is outside the siege perimeter, accessible through a passage the hunters don't know about. You want to send word to the other houses, to every house. Valendi, Corvinus, and the 3 neutral houses that didn't take sides in this war. He selected 3 vials carefully. These contain my blood, sealed with preservation spells. Any vampire who receives one will be able to trace it back to me, verify its authenticity. They'll know the message is real. What message? Cashin pulled out parchment and ink, his hand moving across the page with practiced elegance. Elara watched over his shoulder as he wrote in the old tongue, the script flowing and beautiful, despite the urgency of the words. House Morvain lives. Proof discovered at Thornhaven. Massacre was orchestration to ignite war between Valendi and Corvinus. Request immediate assembly of House Council to review evidence and declare joint hunt for true enemy. Signed in blood and bond Cashin Valendi, Lord of the North, and Elara Ashford, Lady of Thornhaven. Lady of Thornhaven. Elara raised an eyebrow. You claimed it as neutral ground. That makes you its lady by right. Cashin sealed the message, attaching it to the first vial. If we survive this, you'll need the title's protection. It's the only thing that might keep other houses from killing you for being bonded to me. The casual mention of her death made Elara's stomach tighten. And if we don't survive, then at least the houses will know the truth. They'll hunt for Morvain instead of each other. He prepared 2 more identical messages, his movements precise and efficient. Small comfort, perhaps, but better than dying for nothing. Through the bond, Elara felt what he didn't say, that he'd lived 2 centuries waiting for purpose, for something worth dying for. That he'd been lonely so long he'd forgotten what connection felt like. That having her here, bound to him, made him feel alive in ways he hadn't thought possible anymore. We're not going to die, she said firmly. Cashin looked at her, surprise flickering across his face. Such certainty. I didn't survive 5 years alone in London to die in my family's manor before I'm even 30. Elara picked up one of the silver candlesticks, testing its weight. Besides, you still haven't taught me proper vampire etiquette. I'll never know how to bow without showing weakness. His laugh was soft, genuine. True, and we can't have you embarrassing yourself at house councils. Exactly. She met his eyes, feeling the bond pulse between them. So we get these messages to the ravens. We survive the siege. And we finish what Caroline started. Together, together, Cashin echoed. And the word carried weight. Like an oath, a sudden surge through the bond made them both freeze. Danger, close and getting closer. They're testing the wards, Cashin said, his voice sharp. The eastern entrance. They found it. How long until they break through? Minutes. Maybe less. He gathered the messages and vials, pressing them into her hands. You need to reach the tower. Now. What about you? I'll hold the eastern entrance. Buy you time. His hand cupped her face, thumb brushing her cheek. The passage to the tower is behind that shelf. Follow it north until you reach the spiral stairs. The ravens respond to fresh blood. Cut your palm and let 3 drops fall. They'll come. Cashin, I'll be fine. The wards will hold long enough, but through the bond, she felt his uncertainty. His fear that this might be goodbye. Elara rose on her toes and kissed him. It was brief, desperate, tasting of blood and determination. When she pulled back, Cashin's eyes were wide, his carefully maintained control shattered. Don't die, she said. That's an order from the Lady of Thornhaven. Then she ran for the shelf, not looking back, feeling Cashin's presence in her mind like an anchor as she plunged into the darkness of the tower passage. Chapter 10. Dawn's Promiseth Tower passage was pitch black and suffocating. Elara ran with one hand trailing the wall, her breath coming in sharp gasps. Behind her, through the bond, she felt Cashin engage. The hunters felt his cold fury as he defended the catacombs, his power lashing out in waves that made even her distant heart stutter. Don't stop, his voice commanded in her mind. No matter what you feel through the bond, keep moving. I won't, she promised, even as she felt him take a hit that would have killed a human instantly. The passage slopped upward, growing narrower. Elara's shoulders scraped against stone, her hands finding the spiral stairs Cashin had mentioned. She climbed in darkness, counting steps to keep herself focused. 20, 30, 40, a sound behind her. Footsteps impossibly fast. One got past me. Cashin's voice was strained. Run faster. Elara abandoned caution and sprinted up the remaining stairs, her legs burning. The passage opened into a small chamber, the tower room, exactly as Cashin had described. Moonlight poured through the windows, illuminating the perches where ravens slept. Their dark forms barely visible against the shadows. She pulled out the knife Cashin had given her and cut her palm without hesitation. 3 drops of blood hit the stone floor, and the ravens stirred immediately, their eyes gleaming red in the darkness. "Take these," Alara said, attaching the vials and messages to their legs with trembling fingers. "To House Valenti, to House Corvinus, to the Neutral Council. Fly fast." The ravens launched through the open windows as one, their wings silent against the night sky. A vampire materialized in the doorway. This one was different from the ferals, older, more controlled, wearing Corvinus colors. Its eyes fixed on Alara with predatory intelligence. "The messages are already gone," Alara said, backing toward the window. "You're too late." "Am I?" The vampire smiled, showing fangs. "You're the real prize, little Ashford, the bonded human." Valenti's weakness made flesh. Through the bond, Alara felt Cashin's spike of terror. He was fighting 3 vampires at once, unable to reach her. "Hold on," he sent desperately. "I'm coming, stay where you are." Alara thought back. "Protect the evidence. I'll manage. You can't fight it alone, watch me." The Corvinus hunter lunged. Alara did something she'd learned from the bond. She reached for Cashin's tactical mind, borrowed his centuries of combat experience, and moved, not with vampire speed, but with human unpredictability. She dropped low, rolling under the vampire's outstretched arms, and came up swinging the silver candlestick with all her strength. It connected with the vampire's temple. The creature howled, stumbling backward. Silver burned vampires not fatally, but enough to hurt, enough to slow them down. Alara pressed her advantage, striking again and again, each blow guided by Cashin's knowledge flowing through the bond. But she was still human, still slow. The vampire recovered too quickly, catching her wrist and twisting until bones ground together. Alara screamed, dropping the candlestick. "Brave," the vampire hissed, "but futile." Its fangs descended toward her throat. Something crashed through the tower window in an explosion of glass. Cashin materialized between them, his hand closing around the Corvinus hunter's throat. His eyes blazed crimson, and his voice, when he spoke, carried the weight of 200 years of controlled violence finally unleashed. "You touched what's mine." He tore the hunter's head from its shoulders. The body crumbled to ash, scattering in the wind, blowing through the broken window. Cashin dropped the head already disintegrating and turned to Alara, his hands gentle as they examined her broken wrist. "I'm sorry," he said, his voice raw. "I should have been faster, should have protected you better. You left yourself vulnerable to reach me." Through the bond, Alara felt the wounds he'd taken, the price he'd paid for abandoning his defensive position. "The eastern entrance is held." Barely. He cradled her injured wrist, and she felt power flow from him into her, not healing, exactly, but something that dulled the pain, stabilized the break. "The hunters are retreating." The messages spooked them. "They know the other houses will come now." "Then we won?" Alara asked, leaning against him as exhaustion crashed over her. For tonight, Cashin's arms came around her, solid and safe. But this was just the opening move. When the House Council assembles, when they see the evidence, that's when the real war begins. War against House Morvain instead of each other. "Yes, if they believe us." He pulled back enough to meet her eyes. "You kissed me." Alara felt heat rise to her cheeks despite everything. "I did." "Why?" "Because I wanted to. Because I thought we might both die, and I didn't want to regret not doing it." She held his gaze, refusing to look away. "Was that presumptuous of me?" "Presumptuous?" Cashin's laugh was soft, almost broken. "Alara, you're bonded to me. You've seen into my mind, felt my loneliness, my grief, everything I've tried to hide for centuries. You know exactly how I feel about you." "Do I?" She reached up with her uninjured hand, touching his face. "Tell me anyway." He caught her hand, pressing it against his cheek. "I feel like I've been walking through darkness for so long I forgot what light looked like. And then you appeared, stubborn, brave, refusing to be a victim, and suddenly I remembered." His thumb brushed across her knuckles. "I don't know if what I feel is love or obsession, or some twisted combination of both. But I know I would burn every house to ash before I let anyone harm you again." "That's not healthy," Alara said, but she was smiling. "No, it's not." He smiled back, tentative and real. "But it's honest. And after 200 years of careful lies, honesty feels like a gift." Through the bond, Alara felt the truth of his words, felt the depth of emotion he'd been containing, the hope he'd thought dead stirring to life. She felt her own heart answer, complicated and messy, but undeniably real. "When this is over," she said, "when House Morvain is exposed and the war ends, what happens to us?" "I don't know." Cashin's honesty was painful. "The bond is permanent. You'll age while I don't. You'll want things I can't give you, children, a normal life, daylight without fear." His voice dropped. Unless what? Unless you choose immortality. Let me turn you, make you truly vampire instead of just bonded. He said it like a confession, like something shameful. But that's a choice that can't be unmade. And I won't ask it of you. Won't even suggest it beyond this moment. Alara considered this, feeling the weight of it. To live forever, to become what Cashin was, powerful, unchanging, bound to the darkness. To leave behind her humanity entirely. Ask me again, she said, after we survive the House Council. After we find out who really killed Caroline. After we know if Thornhaven can truly be neutral ground. She squeezed his hand. Ask me when we're not running for our lives, and I'll give you a real answer. That's fair. Cashin helped her stand, supporting her injured side. Can you walk? I can do better than walk. I can claim my inheritance properly. Alara looked out the broken tower window, toward the eastern horizon, where the first hint of dawn was beginning to gray the sky. When the houses arrive, they'll find the Lady of Thornhaven waiting bonded to Valenti, holding evidence against Morvain, and refusing to be anyone's pawn. They'll try to manipulate you. Use you against me or against each other. Let them try. Alara's smile was sharp as broken glass. You said I was terrifying. Time to prove you right. Through the bond. She felt Cashin's fierce pride, his wonder, and underneath it all, something that might have been love or might have been hope to things that, for a vampire who'd lived 2 centuries alone, were almost the same, together. They descended from the tower to face whatever came next. The dawn was breaking, and with it, a new war was beginning. But this time, they wouldn't fight alone. This time, they would fight for truth.